Tonight on Crimewatch Solved, the international manhunt for a millionaire hit-and-run driver. How you help catch a killer who slaughtered a young couple.
There was blood everywhere, on the walls, on the ceiling.
And the murder of 11-year-old Reese Jones.
Just said, come on, Reese, it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right, just stay with me, baby, you'll be all right.
Thomas Sipple-Dow was a German national living in West London.
Thomas was an extraordinary person. He would help anyone that had come to him, or he would even detect where help was needed.
Well, Thomas was a sort of eccentric type person. Some people thought he was very strange when they first met him, but when you got to know him, then you realised he was somebody who really had a heart of gold. He was a real softie. There were two thoughts that I used to have about Thomas, and one was, how lucky I am to have met you. And the other one is, I don't think I could manage if anything ever happened to you.
Thomas worked as a computer technician at Imperial College in London. One night in March, 4 years ago, he finished his shift and headed home, unaware that a car behind him was on a collision course. Thomas's head injuries were catastrophic. Despite paramedics trying to revive him at the scene, he never regained consciousness.
I couldn't believe it. I felt devastated and very angry, actually. Because Thomas, you know, would not have done anything wrong. He would have been doing everything properly along that road. And it was terrible.
Over the next 4 years, the hunt for the hit-and-run driver would span thousands of miles. In a manhunt for a millionaire, the super-rich world of London's social elite would harbour a sinister secret. The man tasked with unravelling the mystery was Police Sergeant John Payton.
Yep. Right. Failed to stop. Okay. I see.
This was the most difficult case I've ever been involved with. The investigation was long, complicated, and had many twists and turns.
CCTV footage showed a dark car speeding away from the scene seconds after Thomas was hit. It jumped a red light before making a quick getaway down a side road. Eyewitnesses described the car as a Range Rover, but they didn't catch the registration.
That's weird. What's that bit there?
But the killer had unwittingly left behind a clue.
Forensically, we didn't recover anything from the scene. However, we did find quite a lot of debris that we thought probably was from the vehicle that failed to stop. We realised we'd got some coloured bodywork, and it looked to be a very unusual colour.
Changing colour? Green and blue. As the light hits it. Yeah, I see what you mean.
The bodywork was taken to a Range Rover dealer for inspection.
That's our 50th anniversary colour.
50th anniversary?
Yeah, that's right. Atlantis blue.
Atlantis blue.
Yeah, that's the colour.
So many of these?
Oh no, that's very rare.
Rare?
Yeah.
How rare?
Amazingly, only 85 Atlantis Blue Range Rovers had ever been made, and one of those was almost certainly the vehicle that mowed Thomas down.
Well, this was a monumental stroke of good fortune because it narrowed our search down considerably.
At over 70 grand a car, it was clear the police were hunting for a criminal with considerable means. Land Rover gave them the chassis numbers of all 85 cars, which later produced a list of registered owners.
With 85 different chassis numbers, I now had 85 names and addresses. Working through those was a long, slow process. However, the first name that Range Rover supplied to us was HRH Duke of Edinburgh, so that was one name that we were able to cross off the list straight away.
But finding the remaining owners was going to take time. 3 months down the line, only a handful had been traced and eliminated. It was hoped an appeal on Crimewatch would speed up the search.
It's a Range Rover, but it's in Atlantis blue. That's what makes it so rare. And we're hoping seeing this tonight is going to help someone remember a night back in March.
It was a long shot, but incredibly, one caller thought they had seen the Range Rover 100 miles away in a sleepy town in the Midlands.
Amazingly, he'd actually seen a car like this that day at a small garage in a village outside Leicester. So the day after the programme, a colleague and I went up to look at the vehicle. I didn't want to get my hopes up, but I was very excited.
Yes, Atlantis blue, all right.
And it doesn't look too pretty, does it?
Damage consistent with the collision.
We both could see that there was a possibility that this was the vehicle that was involved in the accident.
In among the debris recovered from the incident was a broken piece of headlamp. If it was missing from this vehicle, police could prove it was involved in the collision.
The headlamp's smashed. The housing's damaged.
You better get the lab to look at it. Maybe it'll match with the debris recovered from the scene.
They were able to say with absolute certainty that the piece of debris that we recovered from the scene had been broken off from that particular headlamp housing. This proved beyond all doubt that this vehicle had been at the scene and was almost certainly the vehicle that had killed Thomas.
The owner of the vehicle had tried to have its identity destroyed. They failed, and police were able to track the car back to its original owner, a woman by the name of Natalia Gologre. At just 33 years old, she was one of London's high flyers. Her previous job as a diplomat at the Georgian embassy earned her a good reputation and a healthy pay packet. She made for a surprising suspect.
From inquiries, it seemed that she was a multi-millionairess with connections within the Georgian and Russian communities. She certainly knew a number of very, very wealthy Russian oligarchs and moved in quite wealthy circles.
But when police went to question her, she'd vanished. Although her family claimed to know nothing of her whereabouts, a friend retraced Natalia's steps on the day of the collision.
She was going to a party that night at the House of Lords, meeting ministers. She liked that sort of thing.
Natalia's friend's story checked out. We were able to prove that she attended a function at the House of Lords on the night of the collision. And in fact, we were able to obtain pictures which showed her drinking at that event.
Significantly, Natalia left the House of Lords early, at 9. The collision happened at 10:15. Minutes after, she was spotted by a neighbour parking up in her mansion block garage.
She looked very sort of shaken. She was in a panic and she was pacing up and down. I happened to look over my shoulder and I noticed a football-sized indent in the lower passenger side of the windscreen. At the time, I just sort of brushed it off.
The odds were stacking up against Natalia And the case against her became even more compelling when police examined her phone records.
They showed a flurry of calls after 10:15 that evening, which was when the collision happened. And then further examination showed that within 5 days, the phone is in Moscow, which presumably means Natalia was in Moscow as well.
Checks revealed that Natalia was half Russian and had fled to her mother's house in Moscow. In a country that doesn't extradite its own citizens, here she was safe.
It was frustrating, to say the least, to know that we had the owner of the vehicle that had killed Thomas identified, and that we weren't in a position to arrest them and question them about what happened on that night.
I like it.
1,500 miles away in London, the Metropolitan Police were playing a waiting game. 5 months later, with a new appearance and a belief that the dust had settled, Natalia returned to London. Within days, police received a tip-off that she was at her mother's multi-million-pound pad in Hyde Park. They moved in to arrest her. It was the maid that answered the door.
Metropolitan Police, I need to speak to Natalia Gologny. We have reason to believe Natalia Gologny is in the building. If you do not let us in, we will force entry. Natalia Gologny?
Yes?
I'm arresting you on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving and perverting the course of justice.
It wasn't me. I didn't do anything.
It was, yeah, a big sigh of relief, actually, to know that somebody'd been arrested, and I kind of almost thought, okay, that's almost like that's the beginning of the end. It wasn't, but it felt like it was.
I was obviously elated. We now had the opportunity to try and question her about what happened on the night that Thomas died. She was very calm, very cold during the interview. The only communication we had was a prepared statement which she'd previously dictated to her solicitor.
I remember the 11th of March very well. Earlier that evening, I had attended a function at the House of Lords. I was driven to the function by a person who had asked if he could borrow the Range Rover. At no stage was I driving the Range Rover at the time in question. At no stage was I involved in the accident as alleged. The name of the person who I lent the vehicle to was Georgi Zhizhvili.
We managed to trace the identity of Georgi Zhizhvili, and what we found was quite shocking.
It turned out that he was found dead 3 months after Thomas was hit.
From the coroner's inquest files that I obtained, it seemed that he jumped off Westminster Bridge at the end of June 2005 and had been found washed up further on down the Thames a couple of days later.
Could it be that he was the hit-and-run driver?
From other statements within the coroner's file, it seems that he was a labourer working on building sites in Manchester. Amazingly, even after all this time, the firm still had George's timesheets.
Look at this.
They showed that he'd been working until 5 p.m. on the day of the collision.
We've got her.
From the Taylor's prepared statement, she said that the man who'd borrowed the car dropped her off at the House of Lords. Well, it was impossible for Georgie to finish work at 5 p.m. and drop her off at the House of Lords in London an hour and a half later.
Natala's alibi was shattered. How she obtained Georgi Zhishashvili's name remains a mystery, but it's possible it came from her influential connections.
She'd spun a web of lies from the beginning of this investigation, and it's clear that she sought to pin the blame on a dead man.
In January 2006, 10 months after Thomas was killed, Natala was charged. She was released on bail and forbidden to leave Britain. For almost 2 years, Natala sought to delay the trial, frequently changing her legal team to complicate the process.
In October 2007, she made an application to the Crown Court for her Russian passport to be returned to her. This apparently was so that she could go to a memorial service for her father in Russia.
Astonishingly, the judge agreed. Natala flew to Russia on the promise she'd return to stand trial a month later. It was a promise she had no intention of keeping.
She didn't turn up for the trial, and her representatives said that she had pneumonia and was too ill to travel. There then followed a litany of medical conditions that Natala seemed to be suffering from in Russia. These included epilepsy, ischemic heart disease, other neurological disorders.
After months of excuses, a doctor flew to Russia. He declared her fit to travel.
Everything that she did was calculated to try and make sure that she never had to stand trial for the death of Thomas.
The judge ruled the trial would go ahead without her.
4 years after the collision that killed Thomas, Natala was convicted of causing death by dangerous driving and perverting the cause of justice by unanimous verdict.
In her absence, Natala was sentenced to 10 years in prison. She showed her cowardice by choosing to hide out in Russia, where she remains to this day.
We haven't given up on bringing Natala back to England. We've been in contact with Interpol, and through our contacts we hope that one day we'll be able to get her back to serve her jail term in England.
Still to come, the murder of 11-year-old Reese Jones, how police cracked the cover-up. But first, a case that shocked even hardened detectives, the torture and murder of a young couple.
Kevin! Cece! Kevin! Oh, it's open.
The body found by worried friends was that of Si Zhu, known as Cece. Her boyfriend Zheng Xuanyang, known as Kevin, lay dead in another room. Both had been savagely murdered.
My initial thoughts were, goodness, this is going to be a big job. You know, it was quite obvious from a very early stage that there were no obvious suspects. It clearly involved 2 Chinese nationals, and there were no great clues leaping at you from the very beginning.
Cece and Kevin were both 25. They'd come to the UK to study, met at Newcastle University, and had planned to return to China in December last year. The hunt to find the couple's killer would involve cutting-edge forensic analysis, tireless detective work, and a journey into a world far from the streets of Newcastle.
There was blood everywhere, on the floors, on the walls, on the ceiling.
There was far more obvious violence than you're used to seeing even in a murder scene. And in some ways it was more like something that you'd see in a horror film than the sort of thing we deal with in real life. To perform the investigation of Cece's death, there was a gag stuffed into her mouth, so she would have had extreme difficulty breathing. And there were a lot of small pinpoint hemorrhages in and around the eyes, little areas of bleeding, which are often seen when somebody's died of some form of asphyxia.
The autopsy on Kevin revealed the true horror of what police were dealing with.
Kevin had received a large number of head injuries, in excess of 50, which is far more than would be necessary simply to kill somebody. He had survived probably at least an hour and a half, possibly a little more, after the initial injuries to his head had been suffered.
It looked more and more likely that Kevin had been tortured and that the killer had remained with his victims for hours. Police were hunting an extraordinarily dangerous man. Meanwhile, at the Croydon Road crime scene, it was established that a laptop and mobile phones had been stolen, and there were more macabre discoveries. The couple's cat had been drowned and left in a bucket under the sink.
I've never known in 25 years policing experience burglars who kill pet cats, and then the combination of that, the injuries, then made you begin to think this is more than a burglary gone wrong.
Just when the search teams thought the scene couldn't throw up any more surprises, they made another bizarre find.
There's something I think you should come and have a look at.
There was a pair of khaki-coloured trousers, and they were a size 36-inch waist. Kevin was a 31-inch waist, so they quite clearly weren't Kevin's.
Get them back straight away.
And they were heavily blood-stained, and the distribution of the blood staining was suggestive that they were probably worn by the murderer or worn by somebody standing right next to the murderer at the time the killings took place. The distinct possibility existed that the killer had actually left the trousers behind by mistake.
The trousers were rushed to the Forensic Science Service for DNA analysis. Tests returned not only a full DNA profile of the wearer, but told police the person they were looking for was Chinese. The profile was urgently run against both the UK and Chinese databases, but in both cases it returned a negative result.
Quite frustrating, to be honest with you. We had the probable profile of the murderer, but we didn't know who it was, and that's obviously where the hunt is on now, to try and identify the wearer of the trousers and who shed that DNA.
A week after the murders, Kevin and Cece's parents were finally tracked down in a remote part of China.
I heard the news from the police. I thought it was impossible. It could not have happened. My wife fell to the floor and couldn't get up.
I felt like I was collapsing. My whole body was collapsing.
Arrangements were hastily made for the parents to come to the UK. It was the first time either had left China.
You're having to meet them for the first time under very sterile and false conditions. You're having to try and build a rapport, which is made even more difficult because you don't speak the language. Then the next thing is you're trying to tell them how their children have been killed in a police station, having flown across the other side of the world, and that's not an easy thing to do, believe you me.
I did not believe what was happening. I didn't know what to do, but there was one thing I was certain of. I must go bring my child back home.
There's a saying, you're taught at quite an early stage as a detective, and it's just a bit of common sense really, is if you know how somebody lived, you potentially might know how they died.
With that in mind, over 100 detectives combed through Cece and Kevin's lives in the hope it would give some clue to who had killed them and why.
It became apparent that both Kevin and Cece were involved in what became known as an internet betting scam.
Gambling rackets in China were making big money betting on English football games.
There was a fairly significant amount of money going into Kevin and Cece's bank accounts. I think over a 2 or 3 year period, I think something like £200,000 went through the accounts. But that's not to say that Cece and Kevin benefited from those sums of money. The murderer might not have known that. The murderer might have thought they were making substantial sums of cash out of that, and that could have been a motive for why they were killed.
All right, if we put this, how does this sound? 15 minutes walk to city centre.
Detectives also discovered that Cece and Kevin had advertised a room to rent just a few weeks before they were killed.
Okay.
We know that on the evening before the murders took place, that Kevin had been in contact with his mum, and he'd suggested that they'd actually rented the room out to a lodger.
But if someone had moved in, who were they and where were they now? The search for the mystery lodger became the central focus of the investigation.
We spoke to thousands of students, friends of Cece and Kevin, did mail drops, house-to-house inquiries, free newspapers and Chinese supermarkets. And to be quite frank with you, we didn't get a huge amount of calls in, and the trail in respect to the lodger was beginning to go a little bit cold.
Hello and welcome to Crimewatch Press.
With detectives drawing a blank, Steve hoped an appeal on Crimewatch might help.
Absolutely vital. We do trace the mystery lodger. What we do know is Cece telephoned a friend days before the murder. She was uncomfortable with this Chinese lodger, very uncomfortable.
Dad, look what I found.
Unbeknown to police, a couple of days before the programme went out, a young boy had found a plastic bag hidden half a mile from the murder scene.
Where'd you get these?
Down the road.
Well, my son came in all excited. He'd found these 3 mobile phones wrapped up in a carrier bag underneath a bush. We had a look at them and looked at the images and texts on the phone. It had pictures of Chinese people.
2 days later, they watched Crimewatch.
Sam, go and get that mobile with the pictures on. When the programme came on, we seen that the pictures matched the ones we had. It was too much of a coincidence. This had to be some sort of evidence, so we decided to call the police.
I'll never forget it, to be quite honest with you. There was a young detective came through and said, boss, we think we've found the victim's mobile telephones.
Hello, boss. Definitely them. I've got a picture of Kevin and Cece on one of them.
When we examined the data on the telephones, we discover a text message, and that text message was absolutely crucial to the investigation. The text message had been sent the evening before the murders, and it was a text message from Cece's phone to the lodger.
The lodger's phone was a pay-as-you-go mobile and no longer being used. It couldn't be traced, at least not through conventional methods.
We had some detectives in the incident room, and they did a very simple thing. They simply typed the telephone number into a Google search engine, and bingo, up came the telephone number.
The number came up in response to an advert for a flat share on Westgate Road, close to the murder scene. The lodger had moved in, paying £390 up front. But just days later, he also moved into Kevin and Cece's. Why did the lodger need to rent 2 flats at the same time?
And of course, that's when we were all beginning to get quite excited and quite upbeat about, is this the lodger? Is this the murderer?
This is the man described to police. But where was he now?
He made a bit of a mistake. He gave the occupants a new telephone number, a number that we previously had not had.
Armed with this new phone number, Police were able to trace the lodger's current address to the most unlikely of places, the market town of Morpeth, deep in the Northumbria countryside.
You start the team, could I have a foot person past the subject premises, please?
Passing target premises. Within literally half an hour of deployment of the surveillance operatives, I mean, I've worked on jobs where we've surveilled people for 6, 7 weeks at a time and we've never got a sniff of anything. No change, no change.
Stand by, stand by, stand by. Oriental male coming out of subject premises.
One of the surveillance commanders rings me and says, "Boss, you're not going to believe this. There's a Chinese guy wearing spectacles, identical to the description given by the people of Westgate Road."
After weeks of searching, police had finally found the lodger.
We had a man within touching distance, potentially of arresting him.
Control, confirm it. Of contact and eyeball.
And I thought to myself, goodness, if he disappears and we lose him on the surveillance operation, then, well, I didn't even want to think about it, to be quite frank with you. It didn't bear thinking about.
The next morning, nearly 3 months after the murders, an arrest team arrived at his door.
Police! 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 Police!
He was taken as he was found. It was a rude awakening.
Given what he was facing, he was pretty cool. Well, he woke up with police officers coming through his bedroom door, which isn't a nice way to start your day, and he took it very well, all things considered.
The mystery lodger revealed himself to be 30-year-old Guang Hui Sao.
What language do you speak?
He's taken into a room, provides a buccal swab, which is a mouth scraping, and of course that yields a DNA profile. The DNA profile from the swab from Sao's mouth is compared against the waistband of the trousers. Bingo. 1 in 1 billion chance of it being anybody else other than the defendant Guang Hui Sao.
Despite intelligence checks both in the UK and China, little more could be established about Sao. He arrived in the UK in 2001 on a student visa, but soon disappeared off the radar. He wasn't a drug user or an alcoholic, and medical examinations revealed nothing to suggest a psychotic personality.
He never showed any sort of real signs of stress that I've seen before with other suspects. He certainly gave the impression that he wasn't massively concerned with whatever we did have to throw at him, and I think he fully expected to be walking away fairly shortly.
What Sao didn't know was police had his trousers.
These trousers are covered in the blood of Kevin. Your DNA all over the waistband of these trousers. Can you explain that?
This trouser is mine. I can recognize it.
这裤子是我的，上面布满我的 DNA 痕迹的。这个裤子是我去他们家里时候3个袋子里那个红色袋子里的，也就是我忘记在被害人家里。
But if Sao's story was true, then why wasn't the murderer's DNA on the trousers?
You know, we would say, well, what about these trousers which are covered in the victim's blood? And it was like, oh yes, they're mine. They're mine, they were in my bag the whole time. They've obviously been worn by the murderer, you know, but that isn't me. And it was very cool, like I say, but not believable.
Stop telling us lies and tell us the truth.
现在不要说假话了。
When the challenges were getting too much for him and he'd actually ran out of things he could come up with, he started to laugh.
Why is it making you laugh?
为什么你笑？
我觉得很可笑。
I think this is laughable.
That's laughable.
Extreme arrogance, I would say, and showed that he really did not care about anything that had happened to the victims, I think.
In May 2009, the case was brought before Newcastle Crown Court. Thanks to overwhelming forensic evidence, Sao was found guilty by unanimous verdict of both murders and sentenced to a minimum of 33 years.
My personal feelings was total relief, not actual jubilation or euphoria or any of the things that I expected to feel, but it was one of relief that we'd got what we aimed to get and justice was done.
But Sao's reasons for the killings remain an excruciating mystery.
I've been asked a number of times what I think the motive for the killing was. And it's all speculation and it's all based upon shifting sands, really. And we don't, truthfully, we don't really understand. And I would love to. If there's one thing before I retire, it would be just nice to just know what really happened, what really drove Sao to kill those two people in the circumstances that he did, because this just wasn't a killing, it was an assassination, really, wasn't it? And you don't do that for reasons that are just purely driven, I don't think, by financial motive.
Unless Sao chooses to talk, we may never know why he murdered CC.
We wanted them to stay together, even after they weren't in this world. So we buried them together. When we are old, there will be no one to look after us, and there will be no one around.
Next on Crimewatch Solved, the killer's cover-up in the case of Reese Jones.
Talk to me! Did you see anything?
I couldn't see anything at first. I could just see like a crowd of people. And then I heard someone shouting, "Here's his mum." And then the crowd of people just sort of opened. And he was just lying there on the floor. He was just lying there. He was just lying there in a pool of blood. His eyes were wide open. And I just got hold of him. Just said, "Come on, Reese, you're gonna be all right. You're gonna be all right. Just stay with me, baby. You'll be all right."
Reese!
Mate, good game. See you next week.
Yeah, cheers.
You want to lift home?
No, I'm fine.
You sure?
Yeah,
All
thanks.
right, mate. See ya.
See you in a bit.
2 years ago, Reese Jones had just finished playing football and was walking the 10-minute journey home.
He only lived 500 yards down the road, 1,000 yards down the road. You know, it was only like a couple of minute walk. And he'd done it on many of occasions, and there didn't appear to be anything untoward, like.
But seconds away from Reese was another young boy, on his way to shoot someone. As Reese walked across the Fir Tree pub car park, the gunman stopped his bike, pulled out a revolver and took aim. His intended targets, 2 rival gang members circling the car park. The gunman, knowing he'd struck a young boy by mistake, callously fired at his targets one final time. As Reese lay dying, the murderer fled.
Are you okay? Reese, talk to me! What happened?
He was lying on the floor. His eyes were wide open, and he was just lying in a pool of blood. The amount of blood was... never seen nothing like it.
Ambulance!
There's a young lad been shot.
Okay, how old is he, please?
He's 11. He's on my football team.
He's being shot.
I didn't see it, but apparently he's been shot. Blood everywhere.
Is he
Oh,
conscious?
my God. No, oh, my God.
Is he breathing?
No, he's not. Someone's just said they think he's dead.
I went up through the door of the hospital, and Reese was in one of the trauma rooms being obviously worked on by the doctors and the nurses. His kit had been cut off him. It's just really heartbreaking to to see him lying there. The room just emptied out. I think that's when it really sort of like started to hit home, because it was just you, it was Mel, and it was just Reese.
I just miss everything about Reese. I miss him giving me a hug. I miss tucking him up in bed of a night. I miss telling him off for having his football boots on the floor. I just miss everything about him.
It's something that you couldn't take in, that you know, he was dead and he was gone.
This is the boy who murdered Reese, just a kid himself. Sean Mercer was 16 years old when he crossed the line from small-time criminal to killer.
Mercer was a member of the Croxteth crew, one of the local gangs. They were in dispute with a neighbouring gang from nearby Norris Green. There was no structure or hierarchy in these gangs. They were kids playing on Xboxes 1 minute, the next minute they'd have access to a firearm.
Are you holding that yet?
They didn't just carry them for show. They carried them and used them against the opposition, and in some cases killed people. Having killed Reese, Mercer rode to the nearby Croxteth estate where he felt safe.
It was here he began the cover-up operation he thought would save him from a life sentence.
Is he in?
Yeah. You're a bit red in the face.
Do you know where he is?
Yeah, he's upstairs.
Lad, I've just let some shots off. Kid's gone down.
You what?
I said I've just let some shots off, you frick!
This boy was later to become known as Boy M. Because he was only 15 at the time of the cover-up, he has never been named.
Lad, where's Yatesy? Give me your phone.
He called in his friends immediately, and they were prepared to close ranks around him to try and protect him.
What's up, mate?
James Yates, 19, bought the gun that killed Reese.
I've just shot a kid. The kid's gone down.
What are you missing? No.
I bought that gun. You're gonna get us done.
Nathan Quinn, 16, also swung straight behind the scheme.
Yeah, give that lad a ring, you know, quiet one. Give me the phone.
Desperate to conceal the evidence, Mercer then called in the perfect fall guy, a quiet 16-year-old with no previous convictions and no affiliation to the Croxteth crew. Later to become known as Boy X, this boy was instructed by Mercer to hide the murder weapon.
What is it? Just get rid of it. Anyone finds out about this, you've had it.
The last to arrive were Melvin Coy and Gary Kays. At 24, they were the oldest members of the gang.
Right, hurry up, come on, let's go. Get a move on.
They left the house in Melvin Coy's Ford Galaxy, seen here on CCTV, just 50 minutes after the murder.
They drove to nearby Kirby Industrial Estate, probably about 2 miles away.
Pass me that jumper, lad. Mace, I put that on. Pass me your top. Keep a lookout, lad. Right, wrap something around that. Yeah, just got the lighter. Hurry up, lad. Yeah, I'll put some petty on it. Keep a lookout.
They burnt Mercer's clothing.
Hey, come on, Mace, let's get some petrol on you, lad.
And doused him with petrol to get rid of gunshot residue.
That's enough. It's plenty, it's done now. Just forget about it now. Just another day.
With the evidence destroyed, the killer and his accomplices watched as Reese's murder sent shockwaves through the nation.
Reese Jones was gunned down by a hooded youth on a bike as he played football.
Whose life was so cruelly and brutally taken.
3 bullets were fired. One of them hit Reese Jones in the neck.
It was a very, very high-profile case, you know, so the pressure was there. The pressure was right. You know, we've got to solve that case primarily for Reese's mum and dad, but for society as a whole. That case needed resolving.
The hunt was on to find Reese's killer. Search teams scoured the murder scene, but found nothing. Even the bullet that killed Reese was never recovered.
We knew from an early stage that it was going to be quite a protracted inquiry. There was eyewitnesses who couldn't identify the offender. There was little forensic evidence and effectively no smoking gun.
What they did have was the killer caught on camera seconds before the murder. Although it wasn't clear enough to identify him, police now knew the gunman had a light-coloured mountain bike. The investigation was hotting up. Within days, word on the street named one boy as the killer, Sean Mercer.
Very early on in the investigation, Sean Mercer's name came into the incident room on numerous occasions. Pieces of intelligence and information were coming in.
Officers were sent to arrest him, and he was taken into custody. Hoping to find the bike seen on CCTV, police searched his home. His mother, Jeanette, was there throughout.
You can come out and have a look, but I don't know what you'll find.
What's in the shed, Mrs. Mercer?
Well, just junk.
Let's have a look. Thank you. Whose is the bike?
Sean's.
Whose is that bike?
Sean's.
We had the CCTV footage showing clearly to us what the bike was, and that wasn't either of the bikes that had been recovered from his home address.
Does Sean own any other bikes?
No. It's just these.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
But Sean did have another bike, and Jeanette Mercer knew it. Unbeknown to the police, she was harbouring her killer son, hoping he'd get away with murder.
She knew more. She lied, and she tried to mislead the investigation.
Sean was questioned later that day. Being only 16 at the time, his mother was again on hand to protect him.
What's your full name and date of birth, please?
Sean Mercer, 17th of the night, 90.
Also present is?
Jeanette Mercer, Sean's mum.
During the interview, Jeanette was keen for Sean not to talk.
I know I'm not allowed to say anything, but I don't want him to.
We're not trying to hide anything.
I know you're not, and I need to wait.
You don't need to touch him on the leg.
But after 36 hours in custody, police had little evidence against Mercer. With no murder weapon, no bike, and no witness pinning him to the scene of the murder, they had to let him go. The cover-up was working, and Sean Mercer walked free.
It's a really disappointing stage of anyone's investigation for any offence, but particularly on this one, because you're so driven, and all the officers and police staff involved are so committed to getting it to the stage where you can go to Reese's mum and dad and say, we've charged the person.
But speculation was mounting within the Croxteth community. Mercer's name was spray-painted on walls and posted on social networking sites. And when Crimewatch appealed for help, 12 people named him as Reese's killer.
That was word on the street. What it wasn't was evidence. So despite everyone knowing the name, we had the job to do to collect the evidence, and that's what we set about doing.
And it wasn't long before Mercer began to crack. In a strained conversation with Boy M's grandmother, he tried to force her to change her statement.
In that statement, she told us that Mercer had arrived at the house on his bike on the night of the murder on a Wednesday night.
You've got a bad memory. It was Tuesday. That's all you need to say. It was Tuesday and my mind's gone.
Can't change my statement. I've signed it.
If you want somebody to lie on your behalf, it's because you're trying to hide something.
The investigation was gathering momentum, but police still needed a breakthrough. 5 weeks after the murder, it came.
We got the information that led us to conduct a search at the address of Boy X.
What is it? Just get rid of it.
Find.
Police thought they'd found the killer's gun. They just had to prove it. Further evidence was bizarrely obtained from a Croxteth Crew video posted on YouTube. The gang posed with a loaded revolver. Unbelievably, it was the same type of gun used to kill Reese and had matching areas of wear and tear.
Obviously, it was a massive step forward in the investigation. We believe now we'd recovered the murder weapon.
Boy X was arrested.
I was scared. Didn't know what I was doing. I was scared to say no. Because you think to yourself, you might have done this to a kid. So what will he do to me?
During his initial interview, Boy X suggested that the person that passed in the gun was Sean Mercer. And obviously with that information, that is a crucial stage of the investigation and progressed it significantly for us.
Boy X also confirmed what the police had long suspected, that Jeanette Mercer had lied about her son's bike.
It's just these.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sean did have a light-coloured mountain bike, and 6 months later, police found it. A day after the murder, a member of the public discovered the bike frame, but had no idea of its significance until a public appeal.
That bike frame was examined forensically, and we found on there Mercer's DNA.
The cover-up was beginning to crumble, only Mercer didn't know it. Seen swaggering around the Croxteth estate, he was arrogant enough to think he'd got away with it, but his time was running out.
By this stage, we've obviously got the gun. We've got the bike recovered now, the links into Mercer. But what, of course, we needed to sort out at this stage was the information that Boy X was giving to us.
Boy X was offered immunity from prosecution in return for his crucial evidence against Mercer. But the Croxteth Crew were ruthless and were prepared to kill. If he accepted, he'd have to be relocated under a witness protection program for his own safety. But his testimony was critical to the investigation, and he knew it. At just 17 years of age, he agreed to give evidence against Mercer.
It was the final piece we needed, with all the other evidence that we'd managed to gather during the investigation to allow us to move to the arrest stage.
8 months after Reese was killed, in a series of dawn raids, Mercer and his crew were arrested. In October 2008, the case came to trial.
At court, it was tense. We knew that this was the time where our case would stand or fall.
They all behaved like animals in that dock. They were so disrespectful to us. They were all talking to each other, making paper aeroplanes. They were all laughing. And you're just thinking, do you realise what you have done?
When the time came to take to the stand, Boy X gave evidence via video link. For his own protection, he was placed in a secret location, but he knew that Mercer was watching.
Just take it and hide it. Get rid of it.
I was too scared to say no. So I took it to...
He told the truth. And at the end of the day, that is a brave thing for somebody to do, and all credit to him.
After 10 weeks of evidence, the case against Mercer was overwhelming.
It was Tuesday. That's all you need to say. It was Tuesday and my mind's gone.
Fine.
On count one, do you find the defendant, Sean Mercer, guilty or not guilty of murder?
Guilty.
I just totally broke down. I was just uncontrollable.
It was a really emotional time. There was people on the jury in tears, people in the public gallery in tears, and It was the time when we realised we'd achieved what we set out to do.
You are selfish, shallow criminals, remarkable only by the danger you pose to others. Reese Jones's life is gone. Punishment for this crime is that you serve detention for life. The minimum period is one of 22 years. Take him down.
I just sobbed. I was just shaking and crying, and I didn't even hear all the other verdicts.
One by one, the rest of the gang were found guilty.
Look out!
For assisting Mercer and attempting to cover up his crime, the rest of the gang received a total of 27 years imprisonment between them.
Showing on any other bikes?
No. It's just these.
For lying to the police and perverting the course of justice, Jeanette Mercer was given 3 years.
I think the main issue is, the real sad part about it is that, yes, we might have brought some kind of results for Reese's mum and dad, but at the end of the day, we can't bring Reese back.
Gorgeous, you know that.
I do struggle some days. And our life just isn't the same anymore. It never will be. We've got different lives now. But I have to force myself to get up and go to work. Because I think Reese would have loved to be alive today. And I can't give up.